Today's homily kind of comes out of the previous two homilies, both from Christmas and then also from the Holy Family. On Christmas, reflected a little bit about the fact that, again, we see over the last several decades a really steep decline in those who are practicing their faith of all types, and also in the Catholic Church, of course, as well. And that even among our teenagers and our young adults, we see an even more precipitous decline in the number of people practicing their faith. And so we talked about maybe encouraging our young people to think about, do you love God? As opposed to encouraging them to first and foremost start our message with, you need to practice your faith more, and making that analogy that if we love God, then it becomes easier to practice our faith. And then on the Holy Family this past weekend, I reflected a little bit about how families and parents are called to be artists in the amazing task of forming saints. And so today I wanted to it didn't initially plan it out this way, but I think this provides kind of a nice opportunity for a sort of part 3 as we celebrate Mary, the Mother of God, because, I heard from people and have always heard from people as a pastor and a priest about some of these struggles, particularly, combating the struggles of parenting with the drop of practicing Catholics and all these kinds of things. I think Mary provides us a nice insight in how to understand some of these challenges when we think about the first two that we've been reflecting on. And today in the second reading, we have this really important line that I think I preached about before, so that we might receive adoption as sons, of course, daughters as well, right? So it is through Christ that you and I are adopted into the very family of God, right? Not in a metaphor, but literally. So we're brought into the family of God. And so that means then that Mary is our mother, right? She is our mother. Again, not metaphorically, literally. And so I think given that, one of the things that I think that I hear a lot from people is, first of all, what about my children who have left the faith? Given that Christmas homily, some people are like, yeah, that it's something that's on my heart all the time and every day, because my son or daughter or my children have walked away. And it haunts me, and I feel like I did something wrong. The devil just cranks on parents on that issue. Look how bad you are. Look what you did. You didn't raise them right. They left the faith because of you. If you had done a better job, they wouldn't have. Right? Look how bad of an artist you are of saints, right? Because your children or your child is gone and has left the faith. I would say a couple of things about that again, I think come to us out of today's feast day. I would first of all invite you with those, if you are in that situation, I would first of all invite you to, with your children, share with them not so much, hey, I need you to go back to church, but share with them your struggles that you had from a very human perspective, right? Hey, I know that I didn't do a perfect job, right? I know that I didn't do a perfect job. I dropped the ball. Maybe even more powerfully, if there was a time I left the church, right? When I was your age, or when I was in my 20s, I fell away, right? And here's what brought me back. Here's why I came back. Sharing those kinds of things, the failings, the struggles, the human side. I remember every story that my parents have ever told me about their time before I was born. Everyone, right? I mean, you just, as a child, you latch onto that. Even as an older child, in our 30s, 40s, 50s, we love those stories and we appreciate them because it shows us that our parents, it helps us, it gives us an insight into the humanity of our parents. Right? And that's something that children want to hear. Most children, if you call them and they're in their 20s and you tell them, go back to church, they're going to be like, oh, great. Mom's calling again. But, wow, there's a real power in sharing those stories of failings and struggles. And again, I love today because we get a great insight into that. You might think, well, yeah, I'm an awful parent. Mary and Joseph had it all figured out. Look at the gospel today. I was almost laughing, it never hit me before, right? Mary and Joseph left Jesus in Jerusalem for 3 days. That would get you arrested now, right? That would get you arrested. Mary, I remember, I know lots of parents, maybe who've left their children somewhere for a few minutes, and it tears them up. Mary and Joseph did it for 3 days, right? So did Mary sin? No, but was she a perfect person? Not at all. And I'm sure that they probably shared that story with Jesus. Hey, we are human people. We left you that one time in Jerusalem for 3 days, right? And all that kind of thing. So I think we see in Mary, I think a model and somebody who in Mary, and even Mary and Joseph, who were human, who had struggles in raising their children, and it didn't do all of it right. They didn't get everything right. I think that's something that people can really appreciate. Another thing that I would say to the parents and families who might be struggling with someone who has fallen away is also with Mary. Mary is our mother, and so what that means is that then she desires to have all of her sons and daughters come home, right? She desires to have all of her sons and daughters come home. She's the mother of the living, so she's our mother. So you have a great co-worker in the task of bringing someone back home that you know of, that you're struggling with, that is a son or daughter or whoever it might be. Turn those intentions over to her. Pray a rosary for those people that have fallen away, weekly, whatever it is. Give and say, just in your prayers, Mary, pray for, help me to know what to do, help me to know what to say. I pray for them, help bring them home, help them have experiences that bring them home. And then finally on that issue, I would also point us to St. Monica and St. Augustine. Right? Augustine fell about as far away as you possibly could, right? Completely consumed by the world and all of this, the trappings of sin and every sin imaginable, he did it. And St. Monica prayed every day for him, right? She didn't hound him, but she did on occasion let him know that she was praying for him and that kind of thing. And Augustine came back eventually and becomes one of the great saints. So whoever your child is, or your godchild, or your grandchild that you're thinking about, that you're struggling with, if you know somebody in that situation, no matter how far they are, they could still become the greatest saint in the history of the church, right? Or one of the great saints. They could be in the Hall of Fame of saints. I think a second thing that I would point to, given those first two homilies of Christmas and Holy Family, again, is that some people say, I'm not a parent. You're preaching, and that's very nice for parents of young adults or for parents whose children have left the faith, but I'm not a parent. And I would say in one sense, I'm not either, right? And I think a lot of people, there's also, the elderly, those who are older, those whose children have moved on and whatever, they start to believe this lie that they're useless, that they don't have a role to play because they don't have children, or there's no one left for them to pour themselves into. I have some good friends and family who are parents, married, but are not able to conceive. And the devil is really working on them. I know that's a huge cross. All these people that are in that role, Mary also shows us a path of how to fulfill those roles as a celibate priest, as an older person, as someone who doesn't have children of their own. Mary is not just Jesus' mother. Mary becomes the mother of all of us. And I would say that as a godfather, as an uncle, all these kinds of things, I feel like I have a huge impact on these young people that are in my life, my nieces and nephews, parishioners, right? So there's a mission for all of us, right? There's a mission for all of us. And so, wrestling and throwing nieces and nephews up in the air, even if it costs me the flu, which it has, right? Even whatever it costs, right? No matter what, then there's those opportunities then to also give them, a saint statue for Christmas, or a book about prayer, those kinds of things. There's a role for everybody to play. There were so many people that had an impact on my life growing up. You all have a mission. You all have the ability to impact the lives of people just as Mary did that as well. And then in conclusion, I would also say that sometimes when we preach about those first two homilies on Christmas and Holy Family, many people also are maybe haunted by those who have died, right? Whether it's their children or adults, everybody in between. And so when we hear that, it can be, and of course over the holidays, that becomes an even heavier burden and a heavier cross to carry for many people. About this time of year, one of my best friends 10 years ago committed suicide. And in many ways, it really affected and even just destroyed in some ways his parents. Right? I know many of you, being a pastor, for many of you, you carry those crosses of death. And I think today's feast day is also really important for all of us in that regard too. Because Mary is the mother of the living and the dead. And so we can continue to pray for those who have passed away. Right? We can continue to entrust them to her motherhood. She doesn't stop being a mother of them when they've passed away. And so I have said maybe more masses for my friend, and have prayed more rosaries for my friend who committed suicide and lost his life in that way than maybe anyone else. Right? We continue to entrust them. We have masses said for people, but just know that if you're struggling in that regard, turn them over to Mary. Right? She desires to continue to intercede for them, and that's what, in many ways, her mission is, to intercede and be the mother of all the living and the dead. So we give thanks for this wonderful mother who is a part of our life this Christmas season and always. We ask her to continue to intercede for us, for our family, friends, and for everyone, both the living and